Okay, I think the host is having an internet issue. And in that case, since our second speaker is here, I would invite the second speaker to the stage. And for proper introduction, the session, which is supposed to be the second session, is named Open Source, a Tool for All, and will be echoed by Ridwan Adeola Otun. Ridwan is a 23 years old API and blockchain engineer who enjoys building scalable systems with Elixir, Ruby, and more recently, aeternity. He's currently building a decentralized identity system and the aeternity team. And in this session, you will learn about open source, and it will inform you on how open source can be used by all. So without further ado, I welcome Ridwan to the stage. Ridwan, you have the stage now.
Okay, yeah. So, good evening. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so so basically I'll be talking about open source today and why you should be interested and participate in open source. But before that, a brief introduction. I'm Ridwan Otun, a software engineer at Postergraph, and you can follow me on Twitter at CodeSmare, and my bio, that's the link to my bio. So in case you want the slide out, share it at the end of the talk. So what's the aim of this talk? By the end of this talk, I want to have achieved three things. One, I've been able to explain to you what open source actually is. Secondly, convince you that contributing to open source is not as difficult as you might already think, and encourage you to contribute to open source today. So what exactly is open source? I actually saw this quote from Linus Torvalds, who we all know is the creator of Linux and Git. So he said, in real open source, you have the right to control your own destiny. And I think this is a very profound statement. So by the end of this talk, you would agree with me why this is a very profound statement. So what is open source? Open source is actually just any piece of software whose source code is available to anyone on the internet to modify, inspect, improve. Basically, code that is available to anyone to change and make better. And in the culture of open source, it's a very great way to exchange ideas with different people all over the internet from different parts of the world. It's a very interesting way to collaborate and actually improve upon tools you might already be using. So why should you care about open source? Well, as with all things, being selfish actually might not be a bad idea, especially when it comes to open source. There are many reasons why you should be interested in open source for your own good and for the good of the internet. And the first reason is the fact that you probably use some of these open source projects already without you knowing. For instance, I'm sure a lot of us use VLC, Firefox, Android operating system. These are all open source software that can be improved by you It's great that these tools are open source already, because if they weren't open source, maybe you probably have to pay a huge amount of money to actually use these tools, unlike what you have now that is practically free. Then secondly, for programmers among us, imagine you had to pay for every programming language you write. That's actually not good for the ecosystem. So and the fact that most of these programming languages, particularly almost all of them, are open source. So you can contribute to the programming languages, add features you think are missing and stuff, and generally just make it better. Then thirdly is the fact that open source powers the internet, ranging from open data to connectivity and everything. Open source is practically behind the internet. When I talk about open data, for instance, the fact that we can share information with each other across the internet, it's a beautiful thing. Then also, finally, finance would agree with me that the world is gradually getting digital. The world is practically digital, and the future of finance is actually based on the blockchain as cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ether, and so on. So, and these softwares are powered by open source. So, why open source? Why do we need open source? Personally, I think open source is a good way to get real software development experience for those interested in programming or a career in software development. Contributing to open source is a good way to level up. It helps you write cleaner and better code. Contributing to open source might actually help you gain an in-depth understanding of a particular technology. For instance, let's say you want to contribute to Firefox. During the course of your contribution to Firefox code base, you would actually learn a lot, because you probably learn about the internet protocols, how web browsers work and stuff. And this is just a very good way to broaden your knowledge about a particular piece of technology. Then activity in the open source community helps you gain recognition in the field. So if you are a regular committer to open source, you definitely be recognized by members of the community. Open source helps reduce development costs, particularly for companies that build software. If you have to roll out every feature you need by yourself, that can get really messy. So imagine a situation where you leverage some open source tools to drive your business growth, thereby saving a few extra bucks along the way. Then as an organization also, contributing to open source actually helps you build your reputation. For instance, an example I like to cite is in the case of Discord. Their contribution to the Elixir programming language actually has boosted their reputation within the programming community. Then also, reading open source code can actually serve as a great learning tool for software developers, regardless of your skill level. Then lastly, I like to say, when you contribute to open source, you have skin in the game. So, and when you have skin in the game, you want the best out of the particular product you're contributing to, probably because you use them. And the fact that you are contributing to them, you want to see them succeed. So why you should start contributing to open source today. It might be difficult to say to you to start immediately, but it's not an insurmountable feat or an insurmountable task. There are various ways by which you can contribute to open source, especially if you're a first-time contributor. You can contribute by adding documentations for particular tools that you use, or improving existing documentations. You can fix typos in the documentations, and even in the code base. Sometimes we make mistakes and even tests will not catch them. But you going through the source code, you can actually fix typos and stuff. Also, it helps to contribute to products you use regularly, because you actually have a very solid idea of how such products work, and you can easily figure out your way around the code base. Then also on the issues board, for instance, let's say you're contributing to a project on GitHub. I'm sure most of those projects might have some few bugs, and those bugs are actually labeled according to difficulty. You can pick the ones that are ranked lower on the difficulty scale and try to fix them. That way you won't be overwhelmed while fixing. Then also casually read sections of the code base frequently. For instance, if you use a product like VLC, just maybe every weekend, just casually read some parts of the code base just to get familiar with the code base. With time, you'll be able to contribute to such code base. Then also, finally, always ask for help from forums, online communities. Don't be scared to ask for help. Don't be ashamed to ask for help if you need it. Then things to note while contributing to open source. Firstly, you should know that it's perfectly okay for your code not to be perfect. And the most important thing is for you to actually do your research and be thorough while writing the code. Also understand that it might take a couple of iterations before you are able to produce something meaningful and acceptable to the maintainers of the code. So don't be set back by a few bugs or difficult problems. It's perfectly normal. Even the best of developers get stuck. Be persistent. Don't quit, and do not hesitate to try. Make peace with your ignorance and be willing to ask for help. We all have things we don't know, and asking for help is a great way to actually learn those things. Then finally, leave the code base better than you found it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Ridwan, for the wonderful session. Please, does anybody have any question for Ridwan before he goes off? Please, if you have any question for Ridwan, you can press the raise your hand icon on your screen. While they're getting their questions ready,
Okay.
Ridwan,
Yeah.
I'm almost sure they have questions for you. Thank you for the wonderful session.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Go
How
ahead.
best do you think a beginner can start contributing to open source?
Okay, that's a very good question. As a beginner, I think the best way to contribute to open source is to actually look for a tool or a product you use very regularly and are familiar with. Then go through the documentation and try to see how the documentation can be improved. Then contribute to the documentation. Then with time, go through the code base. And once you are comfortable enough with the code base, try to see parts of the code you can refactor or you can modify or add to make the code better.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Does anybody have a question now? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm very inquisitive, so I have another question for you, Ridwan.
No problem.
Okay, my second question is for writers like me.
Okay.
If I want to contribute my article to open source, how do you think I should go about formatting my articles?
Formatting your articles, I'm not sure I understand that part.
Sorry, Ridwan, if I can explain what I think she means by formatting better is, if you want to contribute to GitHub now,
Yeah.
we use MD, markdowns, to
Okay.
actually write those things. And
Okay.
if she's contributing an article, I guess the question is, would she write in MD or would she write in TXT text, or just upload the PDF or something?
Actually, I feel like there are different ways to contribute to open source, not necessarily contributing directly to the code base. So even by writing an article on your blog, you're contributing to the knowledge base of the particular product. So, but if you can write Markdown while contributing to the documentation, write it in Markdown. But if not, even writing a book about a particular product is another way of contributing to it.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you, Jet, for clearing that up for me. Thank you, everyone. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have a question before Ridwan goes on his way? Okay, I will take the silence as a no. Thank you, Ridwan. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. And Jet, thank you so much. I didn't get to say that was an amazing session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It was so narrative, and I got to see everything. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ridwan.
Thank you.